as you can see, am a police officer.
Hello and welcome to another bonus episode of Kill James Bond. I am November Kelly, joined as always by my friends Abigail Thorne and Devon.
How you doing?
Hello.
And we have a guest. It's Michael Wave from Worm From Home. How's it going, Michael?
Hi, November. It's going really well. Really happy to be here. Talk about some farming films and how farming is
Absolutely.
really scary.
Farming
A
is
simple,
terrifying.
harmless, agronomical film.
Exactly.
That's a word, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we're watching the Wicker Man, which is
1973.
Yes.
Not the Nicolas
Yeah,
Cage
the
version.
good Wicker Man. Yeah.
The OG.
We'll get to the Nicolas Cage version in due time. Believe you me, we'll get there. But no, this is the good one, the Edward Woodward one. A really satisfying name to say. I'm going to be
Edward
doing
Woodward.
this. Edward Woodward?
Yeah.
Like a
It's like you
fart in a
enjoyed
bath.
saying Edward and just kept saying it. It's very
Edward
indulgent.
Woodward.
You gotta stop me. I'll just keep going. Edward.
Yeah.
How much wood would an Edward Woodward would if a wood could wood?
All right.
And these are the questions that, you know, like the modern Siskel and Ebert are asking.
This is a good mindset to be starting off two recordings with. I think.
Yeah, it's a good energy.
Cards on the Table. This film
Yeah, I
fucking
love
rules.
this movie.
So
much.
good. It's
This was sick
just
as
as a
fuck.
piece of filmmaking. It's, yeah. If you watch it, if you've been watching a lot of bad recent films, you really think, wow, we used to make movies. Yeah.
We used to
Yeah.
make horror movies specifically.
This is a fucking cinema.
Like there is this is a horror film that is kind of existentially terrifying in a way that it doesn't have a lot of like gore, it doesn't have a lot of like blood spattered everywhere.
And deliberately so on the part of the directors and the producers. They were like, let's do something different from Hammer horror, let's get away from the gore, let's really freak people out in new ways by, you know, thinking about how the English upper classes are really scary. And they are.
It's based on a novel, right?
Yes. I don't have it in front
The
of me.
Ritual, it's called.
Yes.
Which, yeah. So, like, basically, you might be more familiar with the plot than with the actual movie. I think this was the position I was in before I'd seen it, where I knew basically what the plot was about. I knew the ending because it kind of entered into pop culture from the 70s. Which is the Wicker Man. There's a Wicker Man. I'll spoil it now. There's a guy who goes in the Wicker Man. He doesn't like it very much.
No, he has a bad time in a Wicker Man.
He does. But how we
You don't want to
get
be in
there
that.
is the kind of like process of a horror movie that's about belief and about sacrifice and about religion in a way that I think a lot of more modern horror films have tried to capture. I'm thinking a lot of Heretic, for instance.
Yeah.
They just haven't really been able to like grapple with it in the same way.
I think it was a really interesting film to watch now in the context of the rise of Christofascism in the US and Watch This Space UK. It's really kind of fascinating, and as kind of cards on the table, as somebody who has like no religious belief myself and also like doesn't really get it, I found this movie to be particularly horrifying because I'm just like, you people are all fucking mental in a way that's probably like quite insensitive, and I probably didn't get it for that reason. But yeah, me and the ghost of Christopher Hitchens had an interesting time watching this film.
You know, I will harp on about this, so apologies in advance. But yeah, also, you know, very much a film about land and land relations and farming and, you know, how ideologies build relationships with the land and the violence that is needed to maintain those relationships, like quite explicitly. But we'll get to that.
Absolutely.
They will always need land. It's the one thing they aren't making any more of, Superman.
As another preface, reclaimed land, of course. So another thing I like is
someone fucking dodged that.
yeah,
They're doing nothing but.
yeah. Eventually, it's all going to be Holland growth industry.
They're remaking Doggerland, I hear. It's back. And it's Dutch.
Creeping polderism comes through us all. No, so like this movie had like famously a very torrid time after release with the British film industry. There's like 3 different cuts of it that may or may not still exist, that have been like dumped down holes or like, you know, cemented into motorway foundations, because various studios didn't like it or didn't think they could sell it. And so the one that I saw was what's described as the final cut and as a restoration. Yeah. And I do really like a translator's preface that this started with a big like card explaining all the restoration work, explaining that they had put in like 500 hours of work to like fix this original like 35mm negative that was like completely fucked.
This is gonna be one of those episodes of the podcast where we've all watched slightly different versions of the film.
Okay,
I think that's good.
So the version that I started had none of that. It just opened with Zardos's Wicker cousin. And my notes say 70s movies love opening with a big fucked up head.
That's true.
That
is true.
Yeah.
My one, I watched on the BFI film player. I paid for it. This is not sponsored content. It was on there. And mine opened with a little note that says, the producers would like to thank Lord Summerisle and the people of his island off the west coast of Scotland for this privileged insight into their religious practices and for their generous cooperation in the making of this film. And
mockumentary detail.
Wow.
That's cute. This is Wicker Man.
Yeah, exactly. Fascinating. 3 different versions at least of this movie.
Yeah, I watched the same one as you, November. So yeah, we've got the restoration.
Perfect.
And, you know, the 500 hours of work they put in, really, really worth it. It looks incredible.
Absolutely.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, I love labor that declares itself. It reminds me of those like New Deal, like this is a printing office planks. But so as you say, Abby, we begin with the head from Zardos. It's a green man, it's a foliate head. And then we see our protagonist, Edward Woodward. I'm gonna be doing this the whole time.
Sergeant Howie.
Sergeant Howie, who's shown in church, right? Singing Psalm 23, reading from 1 Corinthians. This is my body, which is broken for you.
Eating the flesh, eating the blood, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. Well, you see him taking communion, which is a blood sacrifice, right? We're going to get into this.
We got some very pastoral themes in the hymn as well. Like, we're already thinking about where has this bread come from? Where has this wine come from? Does it come from the land? Where does it grow? Yeah, more of a rewatch observation, I guess. But like, it is there from the beginning.
Yeah. I think it's interesting as well that we introduce him in the life of the church as well, like in a kind of community church setting. There are a couple of scenes that, and I think are now lost forever, with him being a cop, like on the mainland in Scotland, where he's portrayed to be like kind of unusually Puritan, even amongst like mainland society. But here it's just, he goes to church, he sings the hymns, he does the reading, and is then yoinked immediately into a little seaplane.
This whole opening credit sequence in the seaplane flying over the Scottish islands is really beautiful.
Really, really beautiful.
It's a nice reminder that we really do have like remote, rural, isolated places in the UK, which we don't often think about, but like they're out there.
Absolutely.
And this whole credit sequence is very long, and it really conveys to us like we are going a long way away from the place we just were, which was a church.
We're going to the Hebrides.
Yeah.
So one thing I really like about this film, which I think starts in the credit sequence, is it is only about 90 minutes long, but it really lingers on so many of its sequences. I feel like in a more modern film and in the bad remake, there's a lot more just kind of chaff thrown in shorter scenes, but you get this really, really, really long credit sequence that is, as you say, Abby, like telling you something about the story and distance, but also just showing you a lot of beauty, which is really nice. Like, let's spend a few minutes like looking at these beautiful shots because we can, but it's so well paced that, you know, it doesn't end up being 3 hours long, even though it does kind of take its time quite a lot. I think that's really nice.
It feels like David Attenborough is going to be out there in the landscape somewhere. These people are fucking nutters.
As we go over the landscape, right, there's this kind of element of alienation because we have these kind of like very barren, very windswept landscapes. And then as we fly over, there's a vineyard. And then there's a town with palm trees
Yep.
planted. And it still looks kind of like Baltically cold,
Yep.
right? And you're just looking at these palm trees in the wind, and that's an element of like profound alienation. And this is it's a great little like horror movie thing, is to show you something slightly off on the way in, to be like, you know, not everything's right here.
Yeah.
The other thing that's slightly off is, and my note here says, this MF pure spits Wes Streeting.
A little.
Sergeant Howie does look kind of like an aged up West Streeting, yeah.
Not even aged up, like he looks like Wes Streeting.
Yeah.
He's just like
that's
pure...
the next prime minister you're talking about, pal.
Oh God, I'm gonna fucking kill myself.
Now hold on, Mainlander. If you want to hear the rest of this episode of Kill James Bond, you are gonna have to come to our island, patreon.com/killjamesbond, all one word, and tithe us like £5 minimum. Yeah, and then we'll probably let you listen to the rest of it. Really, that's how the business model works. So